Randy Pausch in the last lecture said, "Experience is what you get when you didn't get what you wanted, and experience is often the most valuable thing you have to offer." This is the Producers Lounge podcast, lucky episode number 13. I'm your host, Richard Tucci, and on this week's episode, we have producer Thomas Quinn, a writer for print and television, and a documentary producer and director. He received an MFA in writing from the American Film Institute, worked as a story analyst for Universal, DreamWorks, and HBO, and was an entertainment reporter for a weekly Los Angeles magazine. For 15 years, Tom has traveled the world, producing for the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, National Geographic, Travel Channel, BBC, and others. And in 2005, he received 2 Emmy nominations as both writer and producer of the History Channel documentary, Time Machine, Beyond the Da Vinci Code. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a sit-down in the lounge. Would you like something to drink?
A little water just to have on hand would be great.
Sounds great. So, also, one of the interesting things I wanted to try, this is something new. I tried this I actually tried this. A friend of mine, Zach, had this thing called bonfire sessions.
Yeah.
And what he did was he had, basically people came up and did like a little performance piece. So what I did was I took 3 random suggestions from the audience, and as a producer, I crafted a pitch in front of everybody and tried to pitch it to them.
Okay.
The full movie. And if you're interested, and if you're down, I'd like to give you 3 random suggestions.
Okay.
And you craft a pitch for that.
Okay. Yeah, I used to work in the studio system long ago.
There you go.
I was a script reader for the studios.
All right.
And so I spent 8 years doing that for HBO and DreamWorks and all those guys.
Okay.
So I know about pitches.
Cool.
Like an example. Give me an example of how it would work.
Well, like for me, like the 3 suggestions I got were, in the land of hope, there is no winter. Something about Ice Queen. And then go fuck yourself. Those were the 3 suggestions.
Okay.
So then what I created was this elaborate fantasy story where this guy from our universe got sucked into... Oh, it was Wendy the White Witch. That was the second suggestion.
Okay.
So in this pitch, he was sucked into this parallel dimension full of superpowers, and it was cursed in the land of winter. He met up with Wendy the White Witch, who had to go to find some amulet, and then go defeat the witch with this magical incantation, Oge, Ukfe, or Selfye.
Okay.
And then...
Pig Latin there, yeah.
Yeah. And then at the end, he became king of this land, and he said, in the land of hope, there is no winter, because she was the Ice Queen, and he had banished winter, and now it was summer as long as he was king.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that was the whole pitch.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know if I can give it a shot.
Cool. So we're recording.
We're recording now?
Yeah.
Oh, we are?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I should be up on the mic then here.
You don't want casual? Like, I'm looking at the level so I can see it as you're moving back and forth. So whatever you're comfortable with.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't sure if the tone would be better here as opposed to echoey back here.
Oh, I can move it on the board based on where you're at. So.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, this is I guess this is about.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So, how are you, Mr. Quinn?
Okay. So we're recording now. We don't have to wait till 2 o'clock.
Correct.
Oh, okay. All right, well, that's easy now. Okay. I was going to say, like, well, we have to wait, but we're not live.
No.
Yeah, my name is Tom Quinn, and I'm a writer-producer and director of documentaries. I've been doing this for about 15 years.
Okay. So how'd you get started, Tom?
Actually, I came to L.A. To go to the American Film Institute, a graduate school there, as a writer. And I was out to write the Great American Screenplay. So I was trained basically as a feature script writer and worked on that for quite a number of years, wrote about a dozen feature scripts.
Now, AFI is grad school. Where did you go for undergrad originally?
Undergrad school, I went to Iowa State University. And I got a double major in economics and political science. I was originally headed for law school. That was the plan, and maybe then politics.
What kind of law were you going to study?
I wasn't entirely sure. I didn't get that far.
Okay.
I wanted something related to politics, though, probably constitutional law or something like that.
Okay.
And I realized at the time that it cost a lot of money to go to law school.
Yeah.
And I really didn't have anybody in my family who was a lawyer or had any, I really had no help. I didn't even know what LSATs were at the time.
Oh, wow.
So I was quite ignorant about the whole thing. And I decided after I graduated, I moved out to San Francisco. because I always wanted to live in California.
Okay.
Ever since I was 9 years old, and I saw on TV The Endless Summer, and thought, the endless summer, a couple surfers traveling, following the summer around the world in search of the perfect wave. It's like, wow, that beats New Jersey, which is where I grew up. And so I thought, I want to live in California.
Okay.
But I moved out to San Francisco, where it's freezing and nobody surfs.
It's very sweater weather. It's
very much so.
Yeah.
But I moved out there and wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do. And one day was working in a insurance company, just trying to figure out what my future was going to be about. And I thought about film. And I thought, I've always wanted to do something like that. But it's never been a really realistic thing for kids who grew up in suburban New Jersey. But I figured, what the hell, let me give it a shot. And so I called different producers and film schools and all that. And I ended up going to this little hippie film school at the Berkeley Film Institute and learned all the basics of 16 millimeter film production. And worked for some small companies in San Francisco and lived there for about 10 years. Quickly learned that there wasn't much of a film industry up in San Francisco beyond commercials and ads and things like that. There was only one agent in the entire city, which tells you something about where the money is.
Gotcha.
And so I thought, well, I really got to go to LA. That's where they keep Hollywood.
So for when you were there, like, what kind of, as a writer, were you still an aspiring writer at this time? Were you a producer? What were you doing while you were up there?
I was
even out of film school.
I was mostly writing because usually if you can't get a job or can't get a hold of a camera, then all you could do is write. So what I was doing was writing screenplays, trying to get that. And I got some agents in LA and had them represent my stuff. At the same time, I was working for small production companies in San Francisco that did documentaries and corporate multimedia shows and things like that, and made some money there. And eventually decided that I was going to have to make the move to LA. And didn't want to go there as just a stranger with a script under his arm. It's an old story. So I figured I would go to grad school down there at AFI. It'd be a nice way to sort of segue in and meet people and really learn the craft.
Why AFI as opposed to SC or UCLA or Cal Arts?
Well, because USC and the others are full-blown universities, you've got to go through the whole college admissions process. Whereas AFI is sort of an academy, and you can just apply directly to them and send your stuff in and, boom, you're in or you're not in. And so it was a more straightforward thing. I was also told that AFI was very much in the underbelly of the industry. I'd say USC is probably a little better placed, simply because they have more graduates in the industry at this point. But AFI was still a good place to go. And it was also more affordable at the time. So
it's also very picturesque up on...
Oh, it's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful campus up on just above Franklin Street. So I ended up applying, and I got in, but I didn't have enough money to go. And also I was going to have to buy a car to move to LA. I didn't have one in San Francisco. So I couldn't go. I had to turn them down. But then over the next 3 years, I was able to get some good writing gigs for corporate media. And I made good money doing that. And I now had the money to go. So I applied again, and I got in again. And this time I moved and went. And I went as a writer fellow. And like I say, I was working on the Great American Screenplay, wrote about a dozen of them. Most of them ended up under the short leg of my desk.
What kind of stories were you attracted to?
Oh, I liked science fiction and action. I liked kind of thoughtful science fiction things. I wrote one about a kid genius who, wrote a computer program that ended up taking over a college campus and, like an early computer virus kind of story. I did one called The Sirens of Mars about a man who was stranded alone on Mars and tried to make it scientifically accurate, sort of a survival, sort of like that film, the guy who was trapped, how many days was it, 154 days or whatever it was, where the guy was trapped out in the canyon by himself.
Oh, 127 hours.
127 hours,
Yes.
That's what it was, yeah. And it was kind of like that, except on Mars. But anyway, so I tried these kind of challenging premises, these kind of offbeat story ideas. And I managed to get one feature film produced because a woman I knew, Mimi Lesios, who was an action, she was a female kickboxer actually down here.
Oh, okay.
And she's known as Magnificent Mimi. And she is big on the Asian circuit, kicking butt, for live audiences. And she also made a lot of her own low-budget action films, kind of like Chuck Norris kind of films. And so she wanted a movie written that sort of exploited her talents. And she had written some other and produced some other low-budget movies that she had made. And so I wrote a script for her. And it was about, she was a female cop who had gone through a traumatic experience and divorced her husband, who ended up becoming abusive, and he ended up becoming part of this sort of white slave trade kind of thing.
Holy shit.
And she ends up coming back from this traumatic experience and kicking butt and taking vengeance and so forth, both on an evil guy and her ex-husband. So we wrote that, and it ended up getting produced. And I don't want to say that it was, it came off as kind of cheesy, but the AFI is thinking of transferring it to flammable nitrate stock. So that gives you an idea of where it's at. But I'll have to tell you, the movie came out in the late 90s. And it made the circuits. And over the years, I've gotten residual checks.
Oh, wow.
Just like $1,000 here, $1,000 there, out of the blue. And I'm one of the few writers I know that actually got paid residual checks from stuff he wrote.
Nice.
That doesn't happen too often these days.
Who's the distributor on it?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
She kind of picked up the ball. After I wrote it for her, I was not involved in the production.
Gotcha.
So I have no idea. All I know is these checks arrive every once in a while, and I don't ask questions.
So you might. So you must have gotten into the guild early then, or?
No, I'm not in the Writers Guild.
Oh, you're not.
I never joined the Writers Guild because there wasn't an advantage for me. This was a non-guild job, this particular feature. But what ended up happening was I became a script reader for the studios, because it's a good thing to do while you're trying to write scripts, because you see what else is out there.
This was in the 90s still.
This is in the 90s.
Okay.
And I worked for HBO. And then when the head of HBO went over to DreamWorks, when that started up, I was brought over to DreamWorks and worked for Robert Zemeckis and Steven Spielberg, and was reading for them.
Nice.
And ended up writing coverage and reading about 3,000 screenplays over about an 8-year period.
Holy shit.
So I got a real good idea of what was out there. And I realized that I was a better writer than about 85% of what was out there. But if you have no connections or inside track, you need to be better than 95%. And I wasn't quite that good.
Yeah.
And you have to recognize that. But it was also a period when Discovery and History Channel were coming into their own. And they were becoming entities of their own. And I would watch those shows and I go, I can do that. And I just felt like I had a natural instinct for documentary.
You point out a very interesting thing, because I went through this own transition myself, where you were at a point where you want to be a writer, you realized you had to be better than 95% of the people out there, but you're only better than 85% of the people out there. I was interested in writing scripts, and rather than being better than 95% of the people out there, I was better than 2. So then I quickly decided, no, screenwriting is not for me. In fact, the last screenplay I wrote, I gave to this girl who was a staff writer on Eureka. And I didn't tell her I wrote it. I approached her as a producer saying, would you be interested in rewriting this for me? And I have the rights, and just rewrite what this other guy did. So then she, not knowing that I wrote it, she gave me a critique basically saying, well, honestly, it's terrible. I mean, I would just keep the title and throw everything else out. So that was my last foray into screenwriting.
Well, they used to do that. I had a cable access show for a while in the 90s, back when they had public access TV.
In LA or in up north?
No, right here in LA.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I used to do like a weekly show. Among the things I did when I was a script reader was I was also a entertainment reporter for a local magazine.
Wow.
And so I got to interview a lot of movie stars. Every Saturday morning we'd interview, Nicole Kidman or Halle Berry or Dustin Hoffman or whomever.
Okay.
And I also got to cover the Oscars twice, which was great. Got to go to the Oscars.
Okay.
That was always awesome.
You bring up an interesting topic now, because a lot of people, when they talk about their career stories and their career span, they kind of gloss over several important things.
Yeah.
And they forget to mention that these very important seminal moments took place over a period of 8 years.
Right.
And I was curious, you were at AFI for 2 years.
Right.
And then after that, you did the public access thing and the local reporting thing.
Oh, yes, right.
So was there overlap? there, or did you?
Yeah, they were overlapped because the entertainment reporter is just a part-time job.
Gotcha.
So I go to movie premieres, and then write a review, and then and then the following Saturday or the previous Saturday we would do the round robins with the movie stars and write up an article about that as well.
Okay.
So it was just a couple hours a week, maybe 6 hours a week or so that I would put into that, watching the movie, writing the review, and doing the interviews.
So all of these, the public access, the freelance reporting, and then the
Script reading.
the script reading for the studios, were these all freelance gigs in part
Yeah.
time or?
They were all freelance. The script reading was, I was basically on their staff. I was getting half a dozen screenplays a week to read for the studios.
Okay.
So I was a regular person that they relied on.
Okay.
They had a team of readers.
So permalance, basically.
Yeah. So it's sort of permalance. Okay, yeah.
Because one of the reasons I like talking about this stuff is get the film students who tune in and listen.
Sure.
Like giving them an idea of what they can expect outside of film school. So, like in this period where you're doing a lot of freelance and permalance stuff, how many other like jobs and part-time jobs did you have until you found steady gig with the studios?
I was fortunate in that my second year at AFI, I was doing coverage through somebody I knew at the school. I was doing coverage for a company called the Mount Company. The Mount Company.
Okay.
Tom Mount, who had previously been the president of Columbia Pictures and then kind of spun off on his own. So I was reading scripts for their company. And I was reading them for free because I was still a student and I was still learning how to do coverage and whatnot.
Internship.
An internship, basically, right. And then once I graduated, they started paying me. And I never had to take any other job other than script reading because I worked for them for a couple of years and then ended up working Paramount and Pathé and MGM and just kind of one studio after another. Sometimes I'd work at 2 or 3 of them at once.
Okay.
And so I always had a pretty full schedule and was able to make a living at it.
Okay.
Plus I did the entertainment reporter stuff.
Okay.
Plus I did the public access TV show, but that was more, I paid for that. You have to pay to do a public access show.
Okay.
You have to pay for the time, but I got the magazine that I did the entertainment reporting for to pay for the show, because what I would do is I would call it Entertainment Today, which was the name of the magazine, and that way it's brought to you by Entertainment Today.
Got it.
And so they were kind of the sponsor, and I would interview like second-tier TV stars and people like that.
Was it fun?
It was a lot of fun, and I got to be on camera, and I got to learn production in a way that I hadn't before, because I was mostly a writer. So I had to, I'd do everything from setting up the set, making sure the lighting was right, making sure all the ducks were in a row and sound and everything was proper, and learned also how to comport myself on film, on camera. And so did a couple dozen of those shows. And that sort of segued me into production. It also taught me editing because they had editing facilities there at the time.
Okay.
And so how this played into the grand scheme was that when I did this for long enough, I decided, I saw Discovery Channel and History and thought, I could do documentaries. I think I'd be pretty good at this. Okay. So I got my own little video camera and videotaped myself and other, historical images and used film clips and all that to put together my own homemade half-hour show called The Unknown America, which is interesting unknown stories about American history, sort of a documentary pitch reel.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I would use it as sort of it was not professional scratch, but it was an idea you could sit and watch and go, oh yeah, I can see a show. I can see a series out of that. And then I would show it to different companies trying to get a job. And so I would use the editing facilities of the public access company to edit together the whole thing. And that's how I learned basic editing. And so I put together this like little pilot show and, showed it around and got some interest and signed a deal. Show never went anywhere, but I went back and filmed a second one that was more sophisticated and learned more sophisticated editing.
Okay.
And that one didn't get me, the series idea didn't sell. It was called Ends of the Earth. And it was a collection of stories of how different cultures thought the world was going to end. This was before the millennium.
Like an apocalypse medley.
It was kind of like that, yeah. It was before the year 2000, so there was a lot of millennium shows that were on at the time. So it was like, well, will the world be destroyed by a natural catastrophe or war or plague or whatever? And it was all these very sensational sort of ideas. And so I put together a half-hour show on that, and I narrated it and hosted it and did the whole thing. and sent it out to about 30 documentary companies. About 5 of them answered.
Oh, wow.
3 of them said no. 2 of them interviewed me, and 1 hired me.
Oh.
They didn't do my show, but they said, well, you obviously know how to write and edit, so we'll hire you to write and edit a show that we've already got going. And they had this show called Beyond Bizarre, which was on Discovery Channel. And it was this globe-trotting show where they'd go and find people who do things like, have themselves, in the Philippines, there's these guys that have themselves crucified every Easter. And they actually have nails pounded through their hands and they go up on crosses. Or other cults where they beat themselves bloody, for penance.
Yeah.
Or some guy, some millionaire in Mexico builds this bizarre Xanadu type place for himself with all these kind of optical tricks around it and just weird ass stories, from the far flung reaches of the world. And it was a great show to work on. And so what they would do is give me a big stack of footage and say, write up a 10-minute segment about this weird place. And so I would look at the footage, write up a script, and then edit it together. And that's how I did that for like a year. And then when that series ended, they sold a new series called Weird Worlds, which is basically the same idea, sort of a new version of the same idea. And I was kicked upstairs to writer-producer instead of writer-editor. And as a result, did a series of those shows, and suddenly I'm a writer-producer. And I did that for 4 years for John Burrid.
Okay. And what does being a writer-producer entail on a documentary like that?
Basically, you're the guy that makes everything happen. You have to research the subject, find out who you want to interview, where you need to go, what images you need to shoot, what your story's going to be. And then once you've figured that out, contact the people, arrange shooting schedules, arrange, set up the schedule and make sure you're within a budget and all of that. If you need stock footage, figure out where you get the right stock footage, and just all the elements, that you have to sort of plan and put it together, and then go out there and actually conduct the interviews. And then once the footage is shot, it did what I do, continue to do what I did before, which was to look at the footage, write up a segment, and edit it together. Except this time I had an editor instead of me doing the editing.
Gotcha. What was your average week like? You come in the morning and
it was intense. It was intense because it was very low budget, not enough people to do the work, and so it was basically whatever had to get done. And so I'd end up, checking in to see what the editor did that day. I would make a bunch of phone calls about people we wanted to interview and try to coordinate the interviews so that we had to go to Boston. We could get 3 interviews in Boston. So
did you travel with the crews or?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I wrote, direct, and produced these shows. So, and then I had a cameraman. Usually they were small 3-man crews.
Because a lot of times now they'll do like foreign interviews and they'll do like local producers, but you're actually going on site with them.
Yeah. A lot of them use stringers, which are local guys who do the interview for you, and then they send the footage back, and that way they don't have to pay you to travel. Gotcha. At the time, we didn't do that. I went everywhere.
Gotcha.
And what was cool was that John Burrid was the company owner, and his father was Bill Burrid, who had done a very famous show called Animal World. And he was kind of like Marlon Perkins in Mutual Omaha's Wild Kingdom, one of those guys. And their shows were actually back-to-back on Sunday nights for years. And so they had a library full of exotic footage, and their whole heritage of that company was wildlife and bizarre stuff around the world. So I got flown all over the world to do these shows with a little 3-man crew. Me, cameraman, and a sound utility guy.
Okay.
And so we ended up flying to the mountains of Mexico to film a mummy museum, to the Shetland Islands to film a Viking fire funeral where they set a whole ship on fire, thousands of people marching by torchlight in costumes like Vikings.
A real Viking
Viking funeral, yeah. And this is up by the Arctic Circle and all. And then shooting in Hawaii for either surf contests or for a thing about Pele, the god in Hawaii. Then we went to Borneo.
What was the toughest shoot you had to do?
The toughest shoot, Borneo was pretty tough because that was out in the jungles of Borneo, and we had to hike through the jungle. And the tough part about it was that we had to take, we were on what was called the Headhunter Trail, which was a place where actual headhunters had gone 100 years before. And we actually stayed with the people whose grandfathers were headhunters. We stayed in their long house out by the river in the jungle. It was awesome. But the problem was that in hiking through the jungle, we had to go through a lot of shallow rivers and ford across them. And we had these longboats, these little primitive longboats. They look like kayaks. And the problem was that it was a dry season. And so some of the rivers were so shallow that you couldn't get the boat across them. So you'd have to get out and ford them across. The problem is your boots get wet when you do that. And then when you're back on land again, hiking, you're hiking in wet boots, which is a nightmare. It'll destroy your feet. It damn near destroyed my cameraman's feet. And so, and our guide never told us to bring an extra pair of shoes. So she pulls out an extra pair of boots, puts them on. She's got nice dry feet. And she goes, "Oh, you didn't bring extra shoes." And we said, "Well, no, you didn't say to do this." And so we're hiking through the jungles of Borneo in wet boots with our feet getting torn up. You're soaked to the skin with sweat a half hour after you start out in the morning because it's humidity and heat and everything else. So that was pretty tough. But it was also fascinating. And we ended up going to the world's largest bat cave, where this is a cave where you walk into a side of a mountain and the cave itself is the side of the Astrodome.
Oh, wow.
You can't even see the ceiling because it's so high and it's lost in the darkness. And 2 million bats live in this cave. And so we go in there, we walk like maybe 100 yards into the cave so that we can face outward out the mouth of the cave at twilight, which is when the bats go out to feed. And so we see this, you're looking at this black frame of the cave, stalactites and everything, with the sky outside the front of this cave. And the opening of the cave is like 200 feet high. And groups of bats would fly out against the sky, and they would fly in circles like donuts for like a minute, and then they would trail off into the jungle, and then another bunch of bats would come and they would fly in a circle like they're getting organized and revved up, and then they would fly off, and this would go on for like 45 minutes. And then on top of this, one whole side of the cave, if you walk in from a certain perspective, one whole side of the cave in a completely natural formation, no human involvement at all, it looked like an exact Mount Rushmore perfect profile of Abraham Lincoln. And it's just like we're sitting there or standing there in the cave filming this with circles of bats flying in front of a profile of Abraham Lincoln that's like 50 feet high. And we're just looking at each other like, does it get any weirder than this? And then once the sun set, we had to march back through the jungle at night where it was raining and thundering and lightning and everything to back to our hotel. And that was rough. And, your clothes would chafe. My thighs were bleeding because we were marching for 8 hours in this humid situation. It was rough. But anyway, so we had a lot of adventures like that all over the world. And often had a lot more fun, shot in Italy, shot in France, England, all over. And had a good time doing it. And like I say, it was rough times, but I often had more fun in these places than I had going to places on vacation. Because you actually had to do something. You had to deal with the people, you had to arrange things, you got to go to places a lot of tourists don't get to go. And so it was a really fascinating globe-trekking kind of job that you don't have so much anymore, because now everything is reality. So now you find one small universe, whether it's Axemen or Ice Road Truckers or, Swamp Guys or whatever it is, and you find sort of one locality, and you find these working class hero guys, and you just hang with them all day, Deadliest Catch or whatever, out in a tuna boat in the North Pacific, God. And you just find this one world that you hang with for a while. And that's very different from what I did because we got, sent all over the place. So we had a nice variety of stuff while that sort of documentary filmmaking was still around in greater abundance. Whereas now, most everything is domestic. You're filming people doing makeup or hair or, families fighting or teenagers living together and scratching each other's eyes out. And so I'm glad I got into the business while that sort of thing was still available. And we also filmed in places like New Jersey. Because
exotic New Jersey.
I did a pilot, one of the shows, because Bird Productions was a very far-flung nature kind of show, Discovery often came to Bird for those kind of travel-log shows. So that's why I got a lot of that kind of work. And I knew how to travel well, my parents grew up traveling and all that, so I had that kind of bug in me.
Okay, let's talk technical details. If I'm gearing up, and let's say I want to be a producer that does what you did, and I want to have my pack, my all-purpose travel bag, what would I have in it for traveling?
First thing you want to try and do is wherever it is you're planning on going, try to find a local person, a fixer, who just knows the territory, and they can tell you, remember to bring this, that, and the other thing, what shots to get, that sort of thing. Mentally go through your whole shoot. Say, okay, we're going to get off the plane, we're going to drive here, we're going to do this. Remember that we arrive here at this time of day, and it's going to take 2 hours to get there. Make sure we want to get there before sunset, because otherwise it'll be too dark to shoot or whatever. And sort of mentally go through all the stuff. Where are the power outlets? Are there any power outlets? Can we recharge batteries anywhere? Are we going to need special protection for the cameras? Is it going to rain a lot? What kind of weather are we going to have? That kind of thing. And so your local fixer person can often make hotel arrangements and things of this nature, set up transportation for you, and also give you, warnings of what it is you have to shoot. And so they'll help you fill out your bag. You're obviously going to want your passport. You're going to want, again, it depends on where you are. If you're in a cold climate, obviously you're going to bring the appropriate clothing. You want to have things like, I like to bring things like DEET, mosquito repellent, of course, because, you can get eaten alive in some of these places. Portable stuff like little portable flashlights, a lot of batteries, things of that nature. Because a lot of times when you buy batteries in the third world, if it's still politically correct to say that, the batteries are lousy. You buy a regular AA battery and it'll last for a day, because they don't store them well. And I was always able to pack fairly quickly. There's sort of a core package of stuff, basic changes of clothing. I like to have a special box within my suitcase just for the technical stuff, things like camera, radio, electrical things, a monitor, these sort of things. And like I say, mentally going to go through each day of the production and think about, okay, I get up, what time, how long is it going to take to get here, how much money is it going to cost, do we have the right currency, can you get change, can you exchange your money, all these, just every detail you can think of, and make a list of these things to prepare for it and then bounce it off of your fixer. Another thing we used to do, and again, this comes from the very low budget universe of documentary filmmaking where we only had a 3-man crew, we would go somewhere like Florence to shoot a museum in Florence. And so we'd fly to Italy. And the first thing we do when we get to the hotel is make friends with the bartender in the lobby of the hotel. And aside from the obvious advantage of getting cheap drinks, usually the bartender knows some local guy who doesn't have a steady job. The one we met in Florence, he had a friend who was a sculptor, which means this guy doesn't have a regular job. But for $100 a day, he'll drive you anywhere. So plus lunch and fuel. So for $100 a day, you've got a driver and a guide and a translator.
And a sculptor.
And a sculptor, because you never know. And so he took us all around Tuscany, and he took us to a friend's vineyard, and he took us to this medieval village, and these kind of places where we wouldn't have known about had it not been for this local guy. And he was able to tell us about traffic rules, and he knew how to drive in Italy, which is a experience all its own. Yeah, so you end up with these kind of economic ways of getting people to help you and multitasking. And even then, you run into stuff that's problems. Like when we were shooting there, we had our battery recharger die. And so it's like, we still had days of shooting left. What are we going to do? And so I had to actually go through a recycler that was written in Italian. And I don't know Italian. But I knew what Sony was, and I knew the model of recharger we were looking at. And so I'm going through the classified ads, trying to look for these things, and finally found one, and found a local shop where they had this available, and were able to to borrow the recharger for there, and save the shoot that way. But you had to do that. We're sitting in a laundromat doing our clothing, and I'm looking through a Italian recycler for battery rechargers. Not something you can prepare for, but something you have to do.
Very, very much so. So, when did you see? How long do you think it took for this transition from documentary to just reality soap opera? How long did it really take for that to hit you and hit hard?
I mean, it had always been this sort of creeping thing ever since the early 90s and Big Brother on MTV. I think that really got it started.
You mean Real World on MTV?
Or I'm sorry, Real World.
Yeah.
Right. Big Brother was a reincarnation of that idea. Yeah. And they it started with that, and it was kind of a unique thing. It began with the writers' strike back in the late 1980s. And without writers, producers had to come up with new ways of doing shows without writers. And they came up with this reality thing, which is where they just follow people around and then edit together the show. And as time went on in the 90s, more reality things, they discovered, hey, this is a cheap way to make TV. And they ended up, you find little worlds to follow. And initially there was no writing. As it ends up now, they're written, they're coached and they're designed. But originally they were just following people around and seeing what they did and finding these little weird pockets of activity. I would say it really didn't hit me hard. I was able to avoid any real impact of reality programming up until about maybe 5 years ago. And then it just became so pervasive. And it's eaten up so much of the time on the cable schedules now.
So right around when the recession hit.
Yes. Well, even before that, I would say maybe around 2005, 2007, somewhere in there. I was still doing lots of full-bore documentaries at the time. I did one about the Da Vinci Code we shot in Europe. I did a Discovery Shark Week show in 2007 or 8. And so there was still plenty of that kind of work for me anyway, back then. As these last 5 years have gone, there's been less and less of what I do because it's expensive, because it's foreign, and we just don't like foreign stuff. Even news is not as much foreign as it used to be.
This is true. Yeah.
And, it's all about money. And Discovery, started buying full into the reality stuff, their version of reality, like I say, Axemen or whatever particular shows they had. And some of them can be interesting. Survivor, as a kind of game show thing was interesting for the networks. But so with less and less on their schedule of that sort of thing, I started doing more things for Science Channel and those guys because they still did more of the older style straight documentaries. And so I've done a few things for them since. But in the last few years, it's gotten tougher to find things just because, and I found myself end up working for foreign companies. So I ended up doing the shark show for Natural History New Zealand. I went to New Zealand for 3 months and lived there to make the shark show. And which
that's the actual title, the Shark Show.
No, the actual I call it my shark show.
Okay.
It's called Top 5 Eaten Alive.
Oh, that's a good title.
Not my title. They came up with it. But it was basically 5 true stories of people who were actually eaten by 20-foot sharks and survived to tell the story.
Wow.
And originally, it was going to be a straight science kind of show. And they had a guy named Mike Bonna, who just did the Megalodon show that was on recently on Discovery. He was a shark expert and also a producer. And so he was the one going to do the show. And I think he's Aussie. And so he was going to do that. And then Discovery changed their mind and decided they wanted to do a dramatic recreation show. And I had a lot of experience doing recreations because I had been supervising producer and writer of a series called Mostly True Stories, Urban Legends Revealed. And it's actually the series, it told the real story behind famous urban legends. We did like 100 of them. And it's the series from which Mythbusters was a spinoff. They saw our show and thought, "Ooh, we like your show. We like the demo part of the show the best. So we're going to do a series just with the demo part." And they got the special effects guys, and that became Mythbusters. But we did the shows where we would do 10-minute segments. Each one would be an urban legend. And the first 3 minutes of each segment would be a dramatic recreation of the story you've heard all these years. Alligators in the sewers of New York, or some guy is drinking in a bar in a strange town. A woman slips him a Mickey. He wakes up in a bathtub full of ice with a missing kidney.
That happened to me.
It did. I hate when that happens.
Oh, yeah, it's terrible.
And it can only happen so many times.
I know. I'll never go back to Kansas.
So anyway, so I had a lot of experience directing and producing these recreation kind of shows, and from that I got a job doing the Da Vinci, a show about the Da Vinci Code, and that was we recreated the crucifixion of Jesus and medieval knights and all this kind of stuff for History Channel, and we got 2 Emmy nominations out of it, one for my writing and one for producing. So that was great. Got to go to the Emmy Awards and hear my name. And I got beaten by Ken Burns, though.
Oh.
That hack. But I'm not bitter. Yeah, he won for, what was it? Unforgivable Blackness, which was about a black fighter in the 1930s fighting against oppression and racism and so forth. So we didn't have a chance.
Gotcha.
We just, no way. But got a couple Emmy nominations. That's pretty respectable.
Yeah, that's good.
We were happy.
Yeah.
And
Do you get it like a certificate from?
You do.
You do.
Yeah, I got 2 of them. I got 2 of these nice manila certificates, saying, well, you didn't get the statue, but here.
Nice.
You were nominated. So that's very nice to get. Yeah.
Oh.
And we did that show. And so I had all this recreation experience. And so apparently somehow Natural History New Zealand heard about me. I don't know how. But they called me and they said, they decided to make it a recreation show. So they wanted to do the shark show as dramatic recreations of the shark attacks, since there wasn't footage of the actual attacks. And so I said, sure, when do you need me? And they said, Friday. So I had to pack for New Zealand in 6 days. And 10 days after that, we were shooting.
Wow.
And so I'm in this bay in northern New Zealand with a 6-man dive crew and a $10,000 fake shark head that I had to order because you need a shark head to swallow your people. And I'm floating out here just going, I didn't even know this place existed 2 weeks ago. And here I am in the middle of this, And it took a little hubris to think that I could fly halfway around the world and be completely in charge of this whole operation. Because doing a show like that was especially complicated because half of it was shot underwater, so you needed underwater cameras, you needed divers, you needed boats where the stories happened, but then you also needed production boats for the crew and the camera. You needed different beaches and locations where this stuff could happen. And fortunately, Natural History New Zealand was well prepared with all that because they were an old-style nature photography kind of show, kind of company.
Gotcha.
So, there was one of those places where half of everybody who worked there had been to the South Pole 5 times. They were real adventure guys. So I was surrounded by, and this is, if there's one lesson you ever want to learn about producing, it's probably true in Hollywood movies as well as documentaries. Surround yourself with people who are smarter than you because they make you look good. Yeah. You're as good as you are at any particular point. You might as well make yourself the weakest link in the chain. And so with people who are better than you around you, don't be intimidated. Let them do their jobs. Keep it all on track. And let them be great because they make you look great.
Gotcha.
And that's really the key to just get the best people and let them do their jobs. And your job as a director is not to tell them what to do, but to point to the horizon and say, we're all going there. Whatever you're doing, make sure we're going there. That's where we're all headed.
Right.
And that way you get everybody on the same page, but still free them to do their job as best they can. And so we ended up doing this shark show, and it did real well. And it was, I look at it now and marvel that I was able to do it. I couldn't believe that I pulled it off. But we did, and it was, like I say, 3 months in New Zealand doing this, and it was an awesome, awesome experience.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, and since then, you've done a ton of other documentary stuff for the Science Channel and Discovery. And...
Done Science Channel. I've done. I worked partially on one of the Through the Wormhole shows with Morgan Freeman. Did a little bit of that, but I was really sick during that production, so I wasn't able to finish. I wasn't able to really give them what they needed because I got dog sick with the flu. In fact, they had flown me to England and to Oxford to interview some cutting-edge scientists there because they do like physics. Wormhole is about physics and astronomy and that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
And so I had a horrible flu, and we're standing in 20-degree weather on top of a church steeple with wind blowing, filming things. And it's like the worst thing I could have done for myself. And the last night I was there, I was so sick that I actually had to sleep in the bathtub in my hotel room, because if I just slept in bed, I would go into violent cold shivers. So I actually filled the bathtub with hot water and slept in the tub all night, and would have to wake up every 2 hours to refill it with hot water.
Oh my goodness.
And that's how ill I was. And then when I got the train from Oxford back to London, it started to snow. And we were hit with a 25-year blizzard that paralyzed the whole country. Every plane was
25-year blizzard?
a 25-year blizzard, meaning it was the worst one in 25 years. Gotcha. That's what I mean by that, yeah.
That's some Narnia shit right there.
It felt like 25 years. But by the time I got to London, to the airport, everything was snowed in. And every flight was canceled for the next 5 days. And so I was stuck in a hotel for 5 days. Dog sick, waiting to get the hell out of there.
Oh my goodness.
And even the London Underground was paralyzed by that point. And so finally was able to fly back on Christmas Day and finally got back to the U.S. But it was just the stars were not aligned, for me on that one. That was a tough one.
Gotcha.
The people there were great. James Younger and Revelations Productions and all were really good folks. But anyway, so I did that, and then have done a couple other things since then.
And you also wrote a book too.
I did. I wrote a book. I decided to take 6 months off and write a book because it's called "What Do You Do with a Chocolate Jesus?"
Now that's a very possibly inflammatory title.
Oh yeah, well it's supposed to be. It's basically a skeptic's history of Christianity, and but it's written funny, so it's sort of like a Daily Show does the history of Christianity. And the most common comment I get is that people laugh out loud.
Okay.
So which is good because the comedy part's a lot harder than the history part. And basically what I'm doing is a sort of an extension of what I do with documentaries, which is I'm kind of a debunker. So I go in and whether it's the Da Vinci Code or Angels and Demons or whatever, let's look at these allegations of what happened in history and let's deconstruct what really happened versus what, people say happened. That was with the urban legends I did that, and with Da Vinci Code and all that. So it was kind of in line with what I was doing professionally anyway. And except you can't get something controversial like this on television generally. And so what I did was to do a funny history of going through the Bible and what Jesus actually said, and then the growth of the church, and then the role of religion in the founding of America, what really the founders thought versus what pious people claim they believed, and did it all with this kind of funny, irreverent sense of humor. And I called it "What Do You Do with a Chocolate Jesus?" because that's kind of what's got to be started. Back when I was in college, a friend of mine, a party buddy of mine, had become a born-again Christian. And so I went down to Florida to visit him on a spring break. And he took me to this Christian revival fair. And there were big white tents full of people who were there to witness on how Jesus had healed their ills or saved their marriages or warned them not to vote for liberal congressmen or whatever Jesus does. And while I was there, they had carnival rides and music and all this sort of stuff. It was like a carnival. And they had all kinds of churchy paraphernalia for sale, including a hand-sized portrait of Jesus made of chocolate. It was one of those, where they have like the metal tins wrapped in chocolate, wrapping chocolate. Yeah. It's kind of a picture on the outside. It was like that. And the first question that came to mind is, what do you do with a chocolate Jesus? Do you share it with 12 friends as the last dessert? Does it turn into the flesh of Christ when it hits your lips like the Eucharist? And if so, does that make it okay for a low-carb diet? And so I started asking these irreverent questions, and it kind of got me into this sort of irreverent deconstruction of fundamentalist religion. And I originally wanted to make a film about it, to do a documentary. But where do you air something like that? Nobody's going to put it on the air.
Yeah.
So I decided, and also that I had more to say in it than I could fit in a film. And also Bill Maher was doing a film about his thing, Religionists, right. I tried to get a job on that film, but it was too late. And so I decided, you know what? I always wanted to write a book about this stuff. Let me take 6 months off and write a book. And so that's what I did. And, it came out and been promoting it. The hard part is promoting it. The easy part is writing it. But I've gotten good reviews. I got like 4.5 stars on Amazon. And then I took a few months off to do the audiobook version of it last year. So that's, if you don't like to read and you're in LA and you'll drive all day, you can listen to it. And but I decided to do that. It was one of those things where I had always had this stuff in my system. And I said, you know what, I've got the time, I've got a little bit of money. Let me take the time off and just do it. And it may come to nothing, but I decided to get out of my system and do it. And I'm glad I did.
Awesome.
So.
Well, cool. I would love to read it if possible.
Yeah, I've got a copy here for you. What Do You Do with a Chocolate Jesus? And by the way, let me, if I can pitch it, it's on Amazon.com.
Amazon.com.
On Amazon.com, you can get it in Kindle or paperback or audiobook.
There you go.
And it's also on, Audible.com as the audiobook. So it's easy to find. And I also have a website, trquinn, Quinn.com. And that has blogs I write and little audio commentaries and more humor and so forth. So,
all right, let me ask you: what are you working on next?
Right now, I'm looking for the next big thing because I finished in the early part of this year. I finished a big history of the world, a history of the whole world, from caves to condos. That was done for Discovery Military Channel and BBC. And basically, it was a big, sprawling 8-part series that they shot in South Africa. And they did 2 versions of it, an American version and a British version. And I wrote the American version of it. And that was the big project. And since then, I've been looking around for the right thing. And it's been a real quiet summer. I've been working on my own stuff since. I'm cutting my own sizzle reel and that sort of stuff.
Now actually, this is one of the questions I wanted to ask with this podcast, because a lot of our jobs are freelance in the entertainment industry. An unemployed actor goes out on auditions and goes to classes. An unemployed writer sits at home and writes on spec scripts. What does an unemployed producer do?
Yeah, exactly.
Or what should they do?
Right. Well, I've always had pretty good. Usually, what ends up happening with me is I end up sending out a resume to every production company I know.
Cold calling or
just sending out a resume. Yeah. Just not even calling. Just because when you call, all you get is the receptionist.
Yeah.
So you send out a resume. You try and find out who it is who's in charge of production or development or whatever. And you try and get it to them. Do a little detective work, go to their website, or sometimes you have to call them and just find out who the person is. And get those resumes out there. 90% of the time, they'll never write back to you. You'll never hear from them. Every once in a while, you'll hear back, thanks, we'll keep you in mind, blah, blah, blah. And once in a rare while, you get an interview. Usually, when I get the interview, it's about a 50-50 shot. When about half the time, I will get the job once I get the interview. So that's an important threshold. And it's, going out there and doing that. And in the meantime, you have to develop your own ideas so that if somebody comes to you and says, well, we don't have anything going now, but you got any ideas we can pitch, you have something ready to go, something you've researched, a treatment you've written up.
And how developed does this pitch have to be? Does it have to be a log line, a 1-page, a sizzle reel?
No, you ought to have at least like a 3-page, to me, at least a 3-page treatment. You got to do some homework. You have to bring something to the table that the guys that you're trying to get a job from don't have. And so you say, okay, I've got a show about XYZ, and here's an outline of it. Here's where we would shoot. This is what it would basically be like, and have a kind of a snazzy, catchy 3-page thing that explains and fleshes out what you want to do.
Okay.
And that way you have something to bring to the table if they're asking for original material. And because that's what I did. I kind of go back to what I did that got me into the business, which is to just make my little home video, spend $1,000 making my funky little homemade video, but it showed that I knew how to write, that I knew how to cut, that I knew what a finished show looked like, and that it was also a good idea. And so you may peddle the idea and they'll say, well, we don't like your idea, but you obviously know your stuff, so we'll hire you to do our stuff. And usually after weeks or months of sending out resumes and being largely ignored. And that's what kills you about Hollywood. Hollywood, in a town full of people dying for recognition and attention, Hollywood will ignore you to death.
Yeah.
It's not that people are mean. If people are mean to you, hey, at least they're paying attention.
Yeah.
But it's when you can't get arrested that's the worst thing.
I never of it like that. If they're mean to you, at least they're paying attention.
At least you're important enough to be pissed at.
Oh.
But if they ignore you, that's the worst. Because, well, hell, I could, manage a Safeway in Iowa and be ignored.
Yeah.
So, so that's the tough part. But usually I end up putting these things out there and talking to friends and say, hi, how you doing? Got anything going? And usually it's no. And then out of the blue, almost apropos of nothing I've done, will come an opportunity. And that's been the pattern with me.
It's not the classic Hollywood fable of like, you kid, I discovered you at a restaurant, I'm going to make you a big star. Yeah. It's more the slow build and momentum over years that you finally put together a castle rather than a quick McMansion.
Yeah. It's not a big. You don't hit a home run necessarily. You hit a double, and then they say, okay, well now steal third, and then and you get bigger and bigger projects. And then there's been times also where, because I had done enough shows at Discovery, there were some executives at Discovery back in Washington who knew about me, and so if they had a religion show, they go, oh, Tom knows religion, call Tom. And there's been a couple of cases, like that's how I got the History of the World show. They knew I had done history, so they called me up and said, you're good at history, can you do this? And, I did a demo, they gave me like one act to write as a demo for what they were up to, and they loved what I did, and so then I got to do the whole series.
Nice.
And so things like that work sometimes. So there are occasions where I work directly for Discovery Channel, and then most of the time I work for production companies that are hired by Discovery Channel. Because that's one thing producers need to know. If you've got a great idea for a show, it's not just a matter of convincing them it's a great idea. It's also a matter of, why should you be the one to do it? Okay, we love this idea about, people getting eaten alive by sharks, but why should you be the one to produce it? Why not some other guy we've hired to do shark shows? And so you've got to prove that you're the one who's the best to do it. Usually what you want to do as a freelancer is you pitch your show to one of the companies that works for Discovery or History Channel. And those companies tend to have reputations. So if you've got a shark show, you go to a company that does shark shows. If you've got, an astronomy show, you go to the companies that do astronomy. If you've got a reality show, you go to one that does reality. And then they hire you to produce the show for them once they get the okay from Discovery. And Discovery provides the money. And that's usually how it works.
Let me ask you. Earlier I gave you the 3 pitch suggestions.
Oh, man. All right, here we go.
You wanna give it a shot?
Sure, we'll give it a shot.
Right.
What do you got?
Just to recap. All right. The suggestions were, Where There's a Will, There's a Way, Narcoleptic Concert Pianist, and the genre of film noir.
Okay, where there's a will, there's a way. Okay, so you have to have a character that is determined against all odds to accomplish something. That's the essence of that. A narcoleptic concert pianist.
Yes.
So you can fall asleep in the middle of a performance. Okay, so obviously he doesn't want to do Brahms' Lullaby. Let's see. And what was the last one?
The last one was the genre of film noir.
Film noir. Okay, so we have to have some of suspense and evil and looming threats and that kind of thing. High key lighting, shadows, mobsters, that kind of thing. So how about there's a concert pianist who's struggled his whole life with this narcolepsy, and it's held back his whole career. And he's finally got a shot at the Hollywood Bowl. And he gets to do a show at the Hollywood Bowl. But he's nervous as hell about, this is his big shot, but if he falls asleep, he's doomed. It's the end of his career. So what does he do? So he contacts like a friend of a friend who's kind of a mobster. Okay? Phil, I'm thinking like a 40s film noir mobster kind of guy.
40s film noir monster?
Yeah. And he hires the guy.
Okay, who would play the mobster?
Oh, God. Let's see. How about Steve Buscemi or somebody like that? How's that?
That's good.
And he would pay the guy to sit in the audience at the bowl, armed, and pay him to basically take him out if he falls asleep. And so that's his motivation to stay awake through the performances, is the fact that as soon as he nods off, he's going to die. And so... that's our sort of suspenseful, he's playing, and, you can see the close-ups of him maybe wanting to nod off, and he's struggling through it and everything, and then he's kind of sweating because the mobster guy's there sitting in the front row of the audience, kind of with his white tie and his black suit, and that's what he does. That's how he overcomes his problem.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming, Tom.
Well, I appreciate it. It's been a great time.
My pleasure. Cheers.
Cheers.
And that's all, folks. Many thanks to my guest, Thomas Quinn, for a terrific interview. Check out his book, What Do You Do with a Chocolate Jesus, on Amazon.com. You can also find out more about AFI, Religulous, and several of the other things we talked about by visiting the links for this episode on our website. Our banner image this week is by myself. Our music this week is Songe by Latché, courtesy of freemusicarchive.org. Please check out their website at freemusicarchive.org. We're starting to grow our Producers Lounge community, so if you'd like to submit either jazz music or banner photos for an episode, post a link on our Facebook page. So we've run about 13 episodes to this point, but unfortunately things are getting ahead of me. As some of you know, I had a car accident a couple of months ago, and with physical therapy, the podcast, projects, and everything else I'm involved in, it's a little too much. And sometimes you have to prioritize your life and put your health first. So the Producers Lounge is going on hiatus. But this is not the end. Plans are already in the works to come back strong in a couple of months. We will be coming back with new guests, a subscription option for iTunes, new music, new photos, new quotes, and more one-of-a-kind insight into the world of film and television. So, like us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Producers Lounge to get all the latest details on when we come back. Remember, you show your support for films by not downloading them. You show your support on Hulu by clicking on the commercials, and you show your support for podcasts by liking and commenting. Thank you again. I'm your host, Richard Tucci. Join us next time for more cocktails and questions, and until then, keep producing dreams.